Today we're talking about the celebration of life, and even though it's an uncomfortable and sometimes a hard conversation to have with loved ones, we have James from Williams-Dingmann here to go through and walk us through some of these questions, some behind-the-scenes stuff, and even how to bring up this conversation with loved ones. And we went into some deep topics, and we covered some stuff that we haven't covered in the past. We've interviewed James prior in another podcast, and we wanted to have him back on with so many other questions we were getting. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this podcast, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. We do this every other week. So yeah, let's get into it. Welcome to the Princeton Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in and around Princeton. Join your hosts, Zach, Mary, and Kim, three locals who live and work right here in Princeton, as we bring you the latest events, exclusive interviews with local businesses, and stories that make our town special. Your community, your stories, your podcast. It's good to have you on, James. It's been, over almost a year? Or somewhere around there, 9 months or so? Yeah. And you were just mentioning, too, that after your visit with us, that you had gone off and got interviewed by a handful of other people?
Yes.
What was that?
Yes. Yeah. The City of St. Cloud has a TV program geared for seniors, RSVP program, and they called me up, and so I got a TV interview thing, and
that's awesome.
It's fun.
Well, we're going to take a little of that claim to fame.
You are.
Yeah.
I believe you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
For the people that this is their first time tuning in, first time meeting you, James, could you just give the listeners a quick overview of who you are and what your roles are and what you do?
Yeah, Zach, working at Williams-Dingmann Funeral Homes, and we wear many hats in the funeral home business, but I'm the resident chaplain and celebrant. So I have the honor of working with families to create that funeral service, that celebration of life. When they don't have a connection to a clergy person or a faith community, our directors will call me and ask me if I can preside or celebrate that celebration of life. So that's quite an honor. I spent 14 years in hospice in spiritual care, so that was a wonderful segue and transition for me. And then I'm the community outreach coordinator, which means I educate the public on all things about the funeral business and do the marketing and buy billboards and get on the radio and podcasts with you guys and get to help people.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
When thinking about marketing, to be honest, funeral homes aren't like the first of my thought of being out there marketing, but it makes sense. I mean, it's a needed service, and I think it's overlooked. At least I shouldn't say in general. I'm just saying for me, I overlooked that as, oh my gosh, I'm knocking everything over. But yeah, no, it's a needed service, and I think you guys do an amazing job. And just the conversations we've had prior, how much work and thought goes into preparing and helping these families, and just opened a whole new light.
Thanks.
Whole new light. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that we don't think about, obviously. We're in the business of living, and so when I was younger, I never had that thought in my mind either.
Right, and people just don't want to talk about it.
They don't. However, deep down, Mary, they do. In my experience doing this a long time now, we all want to talk about death and end of life, but we don't know how to start the conversation. And it takes someone like me or other people to just plant that seed, and it takes the burden off the conversation.
So are you, an example would be like after somebody has passes and then the family doesn't want to talk about it, or you meet with people that you want to get a plan?
Well, exactly, Mary. It's really before.
Yeah,
pre-planning and pre-arranging is kind of my focus.
Okay.
So you think about it, we plan for anniversaries, we plan for birthdays, we plan for wedding celebrations, we plan for retirements. Why not plan for your own funeral?
So
yeah,
I feel like anytime that conversation starts to get brought up, at least for me and my family, this might be different for others, but it almost gets pushed to the side or put to the back like it was a joke. So I try and lightheartedly bring it up of hey, this is, maybe we should check this out or add this to your will, it wink, wink, and then maybe we talk about it, but then it gets always pushed off to the back fairly quick. Do you have any tips or advice or sayings or jokes or, something that we could use or people that are listening could use to bring up or start that conversation with the family?
Yeah, that's really a good point, Zach. I think that one of the reasons we avoid the conversation is because we don't want to scare other people. We don't want to make other people feel bad or awkward, so we're kind of reserved that way, especially in the Midwest. But I think that once you just put it out there, and people are they are relieved. And I guess the thing is in my work, I just talk about it all the time. It's normal to me.
Right.
So I would just say something like, hey, Mary, have you ever thought about your funeral plans? Or have you ever talked about your end of life? Do you have any concerns about that? Be gentle. We can tell the truth, but you can also be gentle about it.
Right.
And I guarantee you, everybody wants to talk about it. They don't know how to start.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
they think about it,
Exactly.
for sure.
And for how many times have you asked that? Has someone just replied with, I don't know, I've never thought about it? Or is it more of, oh, yeah, actually I got a couple ideas? Or
Yeah, frankly, Zach, some of both. Usually people, a lot of the answers are, I don't mind talking about it, but my kids have a problem talking about it. We always kind of put it somewhere else.
Someone else's.
Yeah, we kind of don't want to. Again, deep down, it really opens up an interesting conversation. And in all of my years in being around end of life and death and hospice and in the funeral business, no one's really afraid of it. No one's ever
Really?
said to me, I'm afraid to die.
Really?
Oh, yeah, that's a Hollywood thing. It's a Hollywood thing. And if they are, it's okay too. I mean, some days, I think some people might say, what is it like? And I'm kind of scared of it. But when we face our biggest fears, they evaporate. When you talk about the thing that's the most scary in your life,
Yeah.
it ends up being not very scary at all.
or you uncover lies and then you figure out the truth.
Well,
and then
yeah.
the light shines on.
Yeah.
And
Well, I guess that was an unfounded fear, or that
Yeah.
was make-believe, and that's not true. And
Yeah.
pretty soon it becomes just it's our biggest reality.
Right. I mean, when I think about it, if you were to ask me if I was scared to die, I would say yes. And mainly because I don't have a plan. And I think, well, what would my kids do and where would they go and who would get this and who would get that? So the pre-planning maybe helps dissolve that fear a little bit.
It really does, Mary.
Because then there's a plan.
Once you do that, it's not hanging out there. That's something we know we have to face. If you do it now, you get about the business of living. Once you sit down and do that with your kids. When I asked my dying patients in hospice what their biggest fear was, you know what the number one answer is for everybody? Is my family going to be okay?
Yep.
To your point, we've done all this. We made all the arrangements. We pre-planned. We prepaid for it. The burden is lifted off my family. I'm ready to go. And everybody feels good about that.
Yeah.
Wow. So what's one way that we can just bring this conversation up that's just less intimidating? So is it just those two questions that you had mentioned earlier, like, hey, have we, do you have plans for?
Mm-hmm. Well, in my experience, Zach, having done this, the open-ended questions are very helpful. How do you feel about coming to the end of your life? And let that little space happen right there and see what people say. Because it's a very inviting question. And then you can go from there. So I ask that. The work that I do now with the seminar I have on pre-planning, I do that all over. I've delivered that all over in front of 5 and 70 and 150 people.
Yeah. You're saying that's like your opening line?
I do.
Yeah.
I can.
That's pretty good.
I just kind of go right there.
Yeah.
And
Cut to the chase.
let's talk about our biggest reality.
Yeah, get that awkwardness out right
Sure.
at the beginning and then have them open up.
Yeah.
And so I have a question about a will versus what somebody would plan with you. So in our first meeting, our first podcast, I know we talked about where anybody can just go into the funeral home and basically start a file.
Sure.
And you can update it and change it and, as things change in your life. And how would that hold up? I mean, is it a legal document or?
It kind of is, Mary, and I'll tell you what the best thing is that there's the healthcare directive, and that's kind of off our topic, but it's all part of end of life.
Yep.
And so that is a document that expresses your wishes about your end-of-life care. So I don't want to go too far down that because that's a different discussion, but that's one document. And then under the umbrella of estate planning is the will and power of attorney and these things that you assign to your family. And for us, it's really about pre-planning. It's a file we start at the funeral home for their funeral wishes and their funeral expenses. So they're kind of independent, but they're all under that umbrella of end-of-life planning. And we keep that file in the funeral home, and they decide what they want to do. All the options today with chapel rental and celebrations and meal catering and printing and obituary writing and procession to the funeral home, working with the cemeteries, working with the faith communities. All of that is in a file that's written down so at the time everybody knows what the person wishes for the end of life.
But they could still change that?
All the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because you think about, a lot of, I don't think this happens all the time, but we all know that it happens that, a death in the family can really bring out, maybe the worst in people, and they start like, nope, she told me this one time, or she told me this a different time, and this is what she wanted. But, to have that written down, it would be really hard for somebody to not do what the person wished for in the end.
Yeah, that avoids all the debate and misunderstanding or miscommunication about what mom wished for. So to your point, once it's written down, everybody can refer to that and say, these are the songs that mom wanted, and this is what she wants. Let's respect her wishes versus what I might want and you might want. And it really clears up and makes things much more valuable and manageable so people can be in the moment of that celebration instead of having to worry about where are we going next and what are we going to do next and who's bringing the cake and who's bringing the food. That's why we're here. We accommodate families' wishes.
Yeah. So listeners, you can just walk in. Do you have to have an appointment, or?
We have some walk-ins, but it's advisable to make an appointment because we're very busy and come and we'll accommodate dates and times, and they sit down
get it going
with the director and start the conversation. It's all changeable and all transferable at any time.
Yeah, and no matter your age. I think I think it's more awkward for people to talk about it that are maybe younger because, in reality, it's supposed to be, in reality, people die at all different ages.
Sure.
A lot of it is unexpected.
Of course.
And you have to talk about that. Like, you could die tomorrow, or you could get sick and, you could be gone in 6 months or whatever it is. But I feel like the younger, and by younger, I mean 70 or less. It's not going to happen for a while. Why do I need to start talking about that now?
Yeah.
That's correct.
But it's more important when you have younger kids and, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And usually people ask me a lot when I deliver my presentation and seminar, and they say, what's a good age, James, to come in and start funeral planning? And I always say, well, it's never too early, but it can be too late.
Right.
So
that's true.
It's just to be honest, 55 plus. When you get to be 55, 60 years old, most people start to think about the estate planning and the wills and the funeral planning, just because we're coming maybe near retirement and so forth. That's just kind of a logical time. However, to your point, there's always trauma and tragedy in our world, so we never know when we may die. But we at least want to start the conversation at some point.
Yeah.
During that conversation, is there something that most people often forget that, that should be included in their planning? Is there a topic that's usually something that you have to bring up or they kind of overlook? What is one thing that people often forget to include when planning for death?
We really guide them with that, Zach, when we sit down. We've been doing this 152 years, so after you do a few, we kind of catch on. So we're very good at helping people look at all the options. I think we cover it all. The one thing, of course, for a lot of people on their mind is how much is it going to cost? And the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
So, we are very transparent about all the costs. We have to do that, and they get to pick and choose from all the options in the world today. and then they get a final number and they agree on that and they can prepay for that. So sometimes it's cost. Some
Yeah.
people may be a little misunderstood about that because they've never thought about it, they've never talked about it, they have no idea. So they just come in and we walk through all those options.
And so prepaid, can they make payments?
Yes,
Okay.
well, and some pay in full.
Okay.
I mean, they'll get a final number of all their plans, we give that to them, and they pay in full, and we put that into an account for them that's designated and kept safe for those funeral expenses at the time of need, we call it.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it's done, and the burden is off the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the adult children come in and don't have to, oh boy, how do we do this?
Well, you see, like on social media, these tragedies that happen and these unexpected deaths, and a lot of the GoFundMes or the benefits or the fundraisers that they're doing for this family, you always see in the print, funeral expenses.
Of course.
Without taking a large majority of time, could you go through and walk me through kind of the process of guiding people through your planning process?
We have a handout that I use when I do my seminars that has a series of questions that say, these are the things you can prepare for, these are the documents to pull together, these are things to think about. It's just a broad scope of kind of a life review and who you want to be involved. In other words, do you have a thought for pallbearers? Do you want your family to be involved? Bring your birth certificate and social security number. If you're a veteran, we need some, those things for veteran services. There's just a whole range of things that we help families bring in.
Yep.
Which we make copies of and put in the file, but also to think about what kind of a celebration of life would you like? Would you like to use our chapel, one of our chapels, for that celebration of life? And all those things that, just all the details that go along with it. Would you like to consider cremation? Are you thinking of a full traditional service? Would you like to have a catered luncheon? It's just endless. And again, we accommodate what families want.
I think one thing that holds a lot of people back from doing, this could be anything in any genre, but just not knowing the process and the unknowns of like, hey, I don't know what that technically looks like to walk into Williams-Dingmann's and go through this process. So even just sharing or shedding some light on that process. So if someone had called, made an appointment, and walked through that with you guys, it's kind of like a step one, you come in, make an appointment. Step two, we go over a list of questions. Step three, like pricing and planning. Step four, accounts and folders. Like, what does that step-by-step process look like working with you guys?
Some families come in kind of prepared, Zach, so they call up and say, we're going to come in, we want to pre-plan our funeral, and we want to take care of all of that. Because they may have had a bit of a conversation at home with their family. So they'll come in totally prepared.
So there's like two different kinds.
Can be.
Can be.
Some couples where a person will come in on their own and take care of everything. Sometimes they'll bring a family member or two in. That's welcome. Others have the conversation at home with family, and family will say, great, go take care of that. It's just a variety of ways that people do it. The point being is that it's the hardest part is starting it. It's that 1,000-mile journey takes the first step. And once you just call us, or once you come in, everyone says, man, that was a really good experience, and I feel so much better that I've done that. No one's ever left leaving, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I shouldn't have done that.
That's what I was going to comment, that
Always
I bet they feel
always, Mary.
so good about it.
Always the opposite. Always the opposite of coming in and saying, boy, I did that. And again, I can't tell you how much you start living from that moment on. You're not thinking about death anymore. You're thinking about living, because that's taken care of. My parents did this to us. My mom and dad came up one time and said, your family, or your father and I have decided and planned all of our funeral arrangements, and we all went, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom. And they said, we paid for it. It's all taken care of. What a beautiful thing that we just all experienced then.
Yeah.
Earlier, you had mentioned some stories that I think are worth telling, but to kind of set it up, has there been some funny requests or for funeral or celebration of life that you've kind of like noted in your head, like, man, that's pretty unique, or like that's pretty like?
It is. Thanks, Zach. This is. I want to just preface it by saying, our humor is so important.
Yeah.
In especially end of life. We can still be respectful and reverent, but we can also laugh and have some joy. So I want to just preface it by that, because it wasn't long ago when we maybe it was inappropriate to even smile or things like that, but we really need to keep our humor about all of this. So to that point, just this last year, I celebrated a service with a family, and one of her favorite things was music by the Bee Gees, if you remember the kind of the disco. And,
well, Zach probably doesn't, but
yeah, well, I do. So the Bee Gees, and they're cool. So the gal the deceased was really a fan of the Bee Gees, and so she wanted Bee Gees music played at the service, at our celebration of life. And of course, we accommodate that.
Yeah.
And we started to play a Bee Gees song. I think it might have been even "Staying Alive," and they got up and started dancing. So
staying alive at a funeral,
and her family was dancing, and it was just this moment, like, that's what she would have wanted, and that's how people celebrate. So that's one example of, wow, right in our chapel. And then in the next moment, we're also reverent and respectful and crying and laughing, and it's all cool. It's all good. Another example of a fellow was a very avid golfer, and so we brought a golf cart, drove it right into our funeral home chapel, and had it right up there in the front to represent that this was deeply meaningful to that person. So our job is to create what's deeply meaningful to the person, and it's amazing. Those symbols, those mementos, it's an ancient ritual that we do, and it really helps us express what we don't have the words for.
Yeah.
That's what all of those symbols and flowers and candles and light and photographs and stories, and that's all thousands of years old. That helps us express what we don't have the words for.
Yeah.
So pre-planning, don't hold back.
That's right. Right, exactly.
Has there been, have you been caught off guard before, or when planning something, when someone brings something to you of like, we had this idea, and you're like, wow, I guess I've never thought of that or heard that.
I don't know. The more we do this, the more we honor families' wishes.
Yeah.
Again, we try to help families do what they can do,
Right.
not what they can't do. So obviously within reason. I mean,
Yeah.
Sky's the limit, I guess, Zach. I'm not surprised anymore at the end of life. I mean, I'm not surprised. It's just the way people are, and we have to respect their wishes and what they want. Again, with the golf cart, another example was a gentleman was an avid deer hunter, and we had brought in several deer mounts that we put up at that celebration of life to honor his wishes.
I could think of a few people that would probably do that.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, it's such a Minnesota thing.
It is.
Like, everyone's got to wear orange when they come in.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, is that getting more popular, like a theme?
Sometimes, families will say, wear the color purple.
Okay.
That was Mary's favorite color. Or you'll see sometimes T-shirts that are made especially for that. There's a little bit of that kind of trending, maybe. Depends. Everyone's a little different, but some do that.
T-shirts are made.
Yeah.
Huh. That reminds me of like a bachelor or bachelorette party, and we're with the bride or whatever. What do these T-shirts say?
Yeah.
I'm with the dead.
Well, her photograph on them, or her favorite color, or again, it's really appropriate to signify and respect and honor someone's life.
Maybe I'll design my own shirt.
You could, yeah.
Put that in my plan.
Yeah. One example, another might be, Julie's favorite flower was roses, so bring roses, or just kind of things to help people kind of have a little bit of a theme that would honor that person especially.
Yeah. Huh.
What would you do, Mary, for your theme?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I really want to plan my funeral, though. Like, I want to follow you right back to your office.
Well, here's my card. Step into my office.
Well,
Mary.
since our first podcast, I've been thinking about it, but yeah, I don't know what I would do for a theme.
No.
No. What about you?
I like the music.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to have, I'd like to create an environment where it wouldn't be so dark and dim. Like I like the music, and I'd probably record some video and probably play like my own speech. I'd be like, "Hey, if you're seeing this, I'm dead, and thanks for being here."
Exactly.
Just like,
It's like on the movie.
and then
Yeah.
think about that though, because I don't know, any movie that you've watched where they go out to space or they go somewhere and they send a video back home to their family, and they're like so emotional and they get to share all this stuff. Like same thing. I
Yeah.
feel like I would just take that concept and bring it to funeral home and like, hey, to like all my kids and to my parents and my friends, like,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. Like, I wish I could be here, but I mean, I am
Sorry.
here. But like, you know what I mean? I'm right below this. No, I think that would be a great way to bring some humor. So I would like to probably record a video and then speak to the audience directly.
Oh, I can totally see that happening.
Before I would die.
Yeah.
And then maybe like my last few messages, right? Maybe some advice, maybe some life advice. Or at that point, maybe it's not life advice anymore. And like,
Or it's advice about dying.
Depends on what age you are when you die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About that advice.
That's
But
right.
then I'd probably have some music then that would go along with it. And I think that would be, yeah, that'd probably be,
Music is one of those things that people really kind of define themselves. And we play it all. We've played Elvis and Johnny Cash and Amazing Grace and Old Rugged Cross, the more traditional, but we honor that person, and the family really kind of helps with that. So
Yeah.
very-
Music is one thing that I would want to pick out too. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm in the car or wherever, I'm listening to a song and I'm like, oh, that's a great funeral song. And then I'll send it to my sister
Sure.
and she just gets mad.
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
I think you could also add some fun with it too. This is just me kind of thinking more about it now, right? And like in that video, be like, give them a clue to like a treasure hunt. Be like, I've buried cash and my best
Yeah.
fishing spots, like, are
Yeah.
they're all on a note, but
Yeah.
here's a trivia question. And
Find the
they'd
cream
be like,
cans.
yeah, and they're like, is he serious? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be. Right?
There's a lot of fun things. One story you've helped me think about is we were at a cemetery service, and to your point, Zach, about pre-recorded, the deceased person had pre-recorded an audio on a phone, and so we got to the cemetery, and the family was very humorous. I mean, it was all about humor. So sure enough, when we got to the cemetery, one of the family turned on their phone, and his voice came out and said, "I changed my mind. Get me out of here."
No way.
It was a riot.
Yes.
It was just a blast. And people were laughing so hard.
It's dark in here.
Yeah, yeah.
Change my mind.
Yeah, I changed my mind. Let me out.
Oh.
I'm alive.
Yeah, that would probably turn some heads.
Oh, they laughed.
They laugh pretty hard.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I feel like you have to bring some humor. I mean,
For
obviously,
sure.
there's the seriousness of it is already going to be there.
Yeah.
So, like, you don't need to try and add more. I mean,
Right. Let's not make it up. That's
Yeah.
my point. When I lead a service, I always use the same scripture reflection, and it's called "There's a time for things," and it's very popular. There's a time to plant and a time to reap. and a-
Ecclesiastes, right?
Exactly, chapter 3. And that is so well used because, to your point, is there's a time to cry and a time to laugh. And we can do both. We can do it all within that time frame. We don't have to do it right. But there is such a time for things, and it's amazing when it's a time to laugh at the cemetery, and there's a time to cry at the cemetery. And when we give ourselves permission to do that, it changes everything.
You know,
Just
that
changes
makes
everything.
that, you know, the past, like how funerals have evolved. I mean, now they're called celebration of life mostly
Exactly.
because it's more of a celebration than anything. And, you know, I like back to the Civil War, I got into that and I was reading lots of books and stuff, but like the mourning period, and you have to wear all black, and the widow, I think, wears black for like a month, or, you know, it's just like so different.
Yeah.
And it just has evolved into more of a celebration rather than,
Exactly. Mira, that's the term I use, a celebration of life
Yeah.
versus a funeral service. I mean,
Yeah.
we still use both, but changing the language really helps a lot of things. So referring to someone as a funeral director as opposed to a mortician helps us look at it differently. So
Right. I suppose in your line of work too, has there been a moment where it's just been really rewarding to help a family, or that kind of sticks out to you? That
A lot of it, Zach, is so inspiring. And again, we kind of are talking about folks who die in their senior years. I mean, we all hope for that, of course, but there's always tragedy and trauma in our world. And I am so moved and touched and honored to work with families when they've lost a child to an accident or something like that. It's very heavy, obviously, but to be able to walk with them and be there and be present and do the best we can with that situation is very inspiring to me. It's the most spiritual experience I've ever had, and we all ever will. It's kind of like they call it the two hinges. Birth and death are the two hinges to the journey. They're the most spiritual experiences we'll ever see or do, because there's only one birth of that one person, and then there's only one death of that one person. It only happens one time in all of history. And when I work with families to do that, I'm so grateful and honored that they allowed me to be part of their heaviness and their grief and their tragedy, but also we really reach deep down to find a little bit of joy in that. There was a life there. Let's celebrate the life we had. So I'm just amazed that I get to be part of that.
is it in Peter that they talk about enduring suffering with others?
You would know that better than I do, Zach. Yeah.
That just reminds me of that. And then also to your point of like hinges of life and this special moments and being honored, I can relate to that to a sense of when people get married. I would film their wedding videos, and it's an honor to be like, hey, you're entrusting me to capture your day. Like, it's a special, like, it's a lot of responsibility, and you chose me. So, like, I'm so happy to be here and go through the planning and go through these shots. And then the really neat thing that I get to do is, like, using my creativity and capture the moment and then write their story. I shouldn't say write, but create in a visual aspect and a sound aspect to make them feel and see and hear all the laughs, their vows, their family, the kids there, the dancing, the seriousness, like all that capturing. There's so much that happens, and then getting to write that and create that and then give it back to them. And then, I'm honored when I get to do that. So I feel the importance that you're talking about of being in in those decisions.
Well, and your work will probably end up in a lot of celebrations of life where they're showing the video of what you created for their wedding, or I don't know what kind of technology it'll be then, but I would guess that a lot of your work will end up at their end of life.
We live stream a lot of our services.
So have you ever had a videographer or had people
Yeah.
there that are hired to take videos and take photos of the celebration?
Not so much, Mary. Like to Zach's point, a wedding and a funeral are different, and they want to document the wedding.
Yeah.
But we live stream a lot of our services because there's people that can't make it.
Yeah.
So our technology today, we use a lot of that. We do that. I don't know that we're really documenting that so much. People have the mementos and the printed cards and the memorial cards and photos. They have all of that, so it's kind of self-documented. But we haven't really had a request. There's some people that do take pictures on their own, certainly for that. But we really don't videographer that. And we do provide them with a flash drive of up to about 35 photographs. So in our chapels, we have video screens that will play during the visitation of all the photos or even a video, and then we give it back to them as a gift on a flash drive so a family can have that kind of documented for later.
I started this probably 2 years ago, and I needed to get back on it. But I started interviewing my family members, just their stories and how they grew up and what they've learned, and so like cool. my grandparents. Like I've sat them down in the living room before, and since I have all the equipment to do interviews and set stuff up like this, but like we've done that with our family, and I think that's super unique because those memories, those thoughts, like people aren't going to live here forever. So like we're just limited time, and to have to hang on to like, yeah, we got that. Like I have this part of that memory with them and their stories and what they wanted to share, and these are things that we'll end up bringing to the funeral.
Great.
Right. And then I get to show my grandkids great grandpa and what his stories were, because when I wanted to learn more about my family roots, and I was just like, man, I wish you guys had cell phones back then, like,
I know,
or YouTube channels that I could go watch and see great grandpa or grandma
hear their voice.
vlog through the day. And I think how lucky we are in this time of, technology where people are recording themselves. We have a million pictures of our kids within seconds of like our phone that we could share, and like think about all these memories that you get to capture, and we can bring all these to the celebration of life when it's all done. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And the neat thing is that we've evolved from an oral tradition. We only used to have stories, and then we used to only write it down. And then the invention of photography, we started to document that. And now, as you say, Jack, today with all the technology, you are documenting a legacy. And it's a great thing that I started just kind of, when my mom was in her senior years, I interviewed her. I didn't have a video. I didn't think about video. I don't even know if I could have, videotaped it, but I wrote it down. And so one of the questions, I said, Mom, tell me your earliest memory. And she said, I think I was about 4, and, so that's really great you're doing that, and to have that available for all of our following generations.
Yeah.
And some people have played something like that at the funeral service, at that celebration. It's a great idea.
And it's been a kind of an awkward question. I mean, not awkward, but you get over it. But I was like, hey, I want to interview. And they're like, why?
For when you're gone.
And I'm like,
there's nothing to know here.
I don't want to say it, but we should just get some interviews done.
Move along. There's nothing to see here. Move on.
Well, why? And I'm like, well, what do you think? Why? I want to document this stuff. And they're like, well, because I'm going to die? You think I'm going to die? I'm like, well, yeah, we're going to die at some point. And like, I at least want to
hear your voice.
All right. When you, like, I don't want to just keep saving these voicemails because my inbox and my phone is getting full. So,
yes.
Yeah. We're all dying.
Yeah.
But, that is really a neat thing, and I think about all the folks that could really benefit from that.
I mean, anyone can do it too. Like, pull out your cell phone. And
I think to your point, Zach, we're so modest. No one wants to, hear about me. When I ask people about their, what would you like to do for your celebration of life, a lot of folks, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot. Some people, I don't want to have a funeral. Well, why not? Because nobody will come. And I said, you'd be surprised. And plus, it's modesty. We don't want to talk about ourselves. It's not about me. That's not about me. So some coaching helps us say, I think I would like people to know about me and have my, let relatives know about me. So.
Yes, people will come.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Who comes?
I think the saddest time for me so far is during COVID. But my grandma died during COVID. Oh. And so it was just really hard.
Sure.
It was really hard because people couldn't go. They either couldn't go or they were in masks. It was very limited. It was very
awkward.
Yeah. So that was a really hard time during those couple years.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Tried to do things with phones and all that. It just didn't work very well. So we've learned from that.
Yeah. I mean, we've learned a lot from that. Things have really changed since that. So,
do people still get buried? Sorry to interrupt.
No.
Do people still get buried with objects?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We encourage that. Part of the ritual is there's something that I do called a candlelight service. Sometimes we have a private viewing, which means just the family wants to come, and a handful of folks come. As part of that, I do a candlelight service, and I have a variety of cards I put out and invite people to write a note. so they can write a note, a handwritten note to their loved one, and then I have them put it right in the casket.
Oh.
So that gesture, again, this ritual of tangible writing down, and they'll write a love note, a love letter, and put it right in the casket. Some of them, and this is really beautiful, they'll put it right in their hands when they're in the casket and put that note and these cards right in their hands. What a ritual that helps them be in the moment. So any of that we encourage. Other mementos, at the cemetery, a lot of times there's the casket spray, we call it, all the flowers. We encourage people to pick out a flower and they can drop it in, or they can take it with them. Anything that allows people to express and be in that moment, we encourage.
Oh, I like that idea of the writing.
Yeah, the writing is one for children. I had a story one time of a couple little boys that, maybe I told this in the last podcast, so I apologize if I'm redundant, but I was with a person on hospice, elderly lady who was dying, and she died in front of all of us at the time, in her home, in her bed, comfortably with all the family. And as people started to leave, there's two little boys that stayed behind. And I asked them, do you guys have a question? And they said, yes, we do. I said, how can I help you? And they said, well, we just want to know if Grandma can take the puppy into that box with her when she's leaving. And I kind of thought for a minute, I thought, is it alive?
What do you say?
Well, is it alive, puppy? And so I looked at their dad and I said, well, tell me more about that. And they said, well, and one little boy ran over and got a stuffed puppy. And I said, yes, you can put that in Grandma's box. And they said, okay, great. And they ran off. But they needed to know that that could be done. And of course, so we have kids put stuffed animals in, mementos, jewelry, notes, whatever it is that helps that be meaningful.
So
Deeply.
this is an awkward question to follow up with that, but so people who choose to be cremated, can you put stuff with that before?
You can. It's going to be, of course, incinerated.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
part of them with them.
That ritual again.
Yeah, because when people that choose to be cremated, you don't get that, where you could write them a letter and, but I think a lot of people, is it pretty common for people that are cremated to have a viewing for the family?
Beforehand, sure.
Yeah.
Yep. We do that. Yep.
Where they could do that and
Yep.
then,
Of course.
okay.
Yep.
This is, I guess, maybe out of left field, but have you ever had or experienced spiritual experiences dealing with end of time and people passing? Like, you're dealing with death, and whether or not you believe in end life or resurrection or whatever you believe, I believe there's still a spiritual realm, right, that happens and that people are entering. Have you experienced anything like that or encounters?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
One example is I was with a dying person on hospice, and the daughter was in the room with me, and it was her father, and we were just having a moment, and we looked over, and a tear started to come out of his eye.
What?
And his daughter said, "Oh my gosh, Dad must be sad. I see a tear." And I looked at her and I said, "What if that's a tear of joy?"
How is that possible? For a tear to come?
Well, he was still alive, Mary. I mean,
Oh, I thought, okay, never mind.
Yeah, he was dying.
He was dying. I was like, how
He wasn't dead
is that
yet. He was
possible?
dying. He was dying. He was at the end of his
Okay.
life. And
Okay.
but the point being is the operative word is mystery. We don't know. And part of what I have learned is to be comfortable with mystery, comfortable with the unknown. And because we're so human and we need to know, we'll create stuff and make it up because then we think we know. But at the end of life, we don't know. And I always say, why can't it be good? To that story,
Yeah.
is we always think it's bad. And I say, well, what if that's a tear of joy?
Yeah.
And she goes, I never thought of that.
All those memories coming,
Or where he's going.
Yeah.
What did he see that we couldn't see?
Yeah.
I have seen people smile at the end of life, right before they die. I've seen people reach out,
Yeah.
And you know what, you guys? It's never spooky. Hollywood hasn't helped us.
Yeah.
It's never spooky, gory, creepy. It doesn't mean we like it. It doesn't mean it's a happy time. But what if it's just reality, and we enter the reality, and all the weird, spooky fear goes away?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that
Or
I
we
think
meet
about
somebody.
it, yeah. Or yeah.
Or we're waiting, or someone's waiting for us.
The beauty of mystery. The beauty of mystery.
I think that's the scary part for me, is
What?
the after. Like,
Oh.
what is it? What's going to happen? What, you just, like you said, it's a mystery.
We don't know.
You have faith, and you can hope, and you can dream, and you can think it'll be this way, but what is it,
No one knows.
No one knows.
And why can't that be okay?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just scary to me.
Tell me more. What's the biggest part?
Let's have a session.
Okay, well, here's the question, Mary, as long as we're here. What is your biggest fear about dying?
Well, first and foremost, family, for sure. My kids.
Number one answer.
Yep. If they're like, are they gonna be okay?
Of course.
All of that.
We
And
all
then-
want that.
Yeah, and then just the second thing would be,
What?
what's next?
And what if I said we don't know?
Yeah, that's just scary.
Is it, or is it just wonder?
Yeah.
Is it just, can it be just unknown? And just say, well, I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be unknown, right?
Or how, and it's interesting you said, that's scary. What if why couldn't it be, I'm looking forward to it?
To the surprise or to the to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It could be good.
but
I believe it to be good.
good.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't
my
think it would
gosh.
be. Like, I've thought about this, and I believe in life after death, and I believe in Jesus, and I believe that, like, when we die, like, Paul would write it, I would, for me to die,
Are you scared to die?
No. I'm just not afraid of it. Because I believe in what happens after.
Yeah.
And it gives me comfort. And it gives me joy. And it gives me hope that there's this life after. And I think my only concern of actually dying would be my family. So.
It's the number one answer.
Yeah.
We all want that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest doesn't matter.
Good time for
You're
a
not-
break.
Good time for a break. Nice segue.
Looking for your next outdoor escape? The city of Princeton has 7 amazing parks. From peaceful nature trails and riverside campsites to splash parks, pickleball courts, and disc golf. Whether you're hiking at Pioneer Park, skating at Civic Center, or cooling off at Mark Park, there's something for everyone all year long. So pack a lunch, bring the kids, and plan your perfect park day in Princeton.
All right, so we were talking on break about how different funerals are, and we've hit on the celebration of life and how everybody wants to celebrate. And what about on the flip side, where it's tragic and it's young kids or suicides or all that icky stuff?
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that, and how do you? I mean, because typically I would think that it's the parents coming in. There's no plans. I mean, you don't make a plan for your children, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Same process, Mary, but a very different conversation. Quite heavy, obviously. That's the reason we're there as well, is to celebrate those lives as best we can under the circumstances. But it is a much more difficult situation. But again, we're there to support the family, honor their wishes, respect their desires, and just do the best we can to talk about and be with and comfort all those people around that end of life for those young folks, for the young people.
Because I think, it seems like a big part of your job is counseling families through, and in those cases, probably the hardest times of their life.
It is. It really is.
And trying to bring out, get them to talk about the great things and, pulling stories from them. And that must be really hard.
It is. It is. I figure, I look at it, I'm a companion on their journey. Being with and being present for others is such a honor for me. And our whole team, frankly. We just respect their wishes and just say, how can we make this meaningful and memorable for you? The beauty today is there's a lot of support in grief. There's different kinds of groups, as you know, and things written and on the internet and family and friends and people and faith communities that really help in those times of that heavy, tragic grief. That's really different than just even 20 years ago. So we've come a long way.
Have you ever had where a family comes in and they just leave it up to you?
Of course.
Like you do what's normal or do what's, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to plan it. They just kind of leave it in your hands, and that happens?
Yes. Recently, maybe a year ago or so, I led a service for a young lady, about 34, who died in a tragic accident, and I always call the families, so I called her mom and said, how can I help you? What would you like me to do for you, and how would you like this service to go? And she said, you just take care of it, I'm just numb. So
that's, because you get them when they, are probably, they're in shock.
They are. There's no words.
And now they have to plan a funeral.
Yeah. So we're there to help that as best we can under the circumstances.
What does a timeline look like for planning a funeral after someone's death to the actual funeral? What's an average?
When a death occurs, our staff will contact the family immediately, because sometimes there's family there, or we call them the next day, and our job is to ask them, when would you like to come in and see us to make arrangements? Sometimes it's the next day, the next couple of days. They're really pretty good about coming in and starting that conversation. And then for the celebration of life or the service, it can be a few days later, a week later, sometimes a couple weeks, and even later. We've had people that I do a service that happened 3 months ago. Just depends on their circumstances, and we can accommodate all of that, whatever they wish. But everyone's a little different. But usually it's sooner than later.
Yeah.
Especially if everyone is kind of in the area and they can kind of make the plans and take that together to have people be involved.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some fun. Let's move over to the lighter
Some
side
lighter
of things.
transition here.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's transition into maybe some personal questions for you, James, since you're the expert. Things like, what have you thought about what song, if you had to pick one song for your funeral?
Yeah, I this has always been the song in my mind, and I guess "Stairway to Heaven" by Led Zeppelin would be the one.
Really?
Well, I don't know. I have a little humor, about that. That's one that kind of is in my dead file at home.
Dead file.
I got a dead file.
Yes.
It's about that thick. It's getting really big because I got a lot of songs and a lot of writings and a lot
So
of
your
work.
funeral's going to be like a whole day.
Oh, a couple of weeks, I think, is what we're going to. Yeah, get a bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. But "Stairway to Heaven" is one. Another one mentioned to me the other day was "Spirit in the Sky." These are some older songs for moi. But there's a few. But that's something. It's kind of tongue in cheek. It's kind of in jest. I really haven't thought about, but that might play part of that. Yeah. "Stairway to Heaven."
Mine is Heavenly Day
Oh,
by, I think it's Patty Griffith.
okay.
That song for sure.
Yeah.
I have no idea, so.
Yeah.
I'll play it for you later. And you have no idea what your song would be?
No. I just, like I said, I think the video would be my deal.
Yeah.
But the music, I don't know. I just pull open my Spotify and
Exactly.
turn on shuffle.
Oh my God.
Turn on shuffle.
It's like, you might get my workout songs. You might get my.
Sure.
That's what I'll do. I'll start a new playlist and be like,
Yeah.
call it
Dead list.
Dead
Yeah.
list.
There
This
you
is
go.
my dead list. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Hey.
Make a playlist.
Hashtag dead list.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And tell all your friends, this is where my list is.
Hey, you could listen to my Spotify playlist. Check it out. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Share it on Instagram and Facebook. Hey, guys.
Yeah. Is there anything that would be really bad about if I played this song or? Yeah. I don't know. I also, and this is just me because I'm a brat, but I want a sad song. I want, and I think about like Amazing Grace. Those like funeral songs are typically, I think, well, you tell me because I don't know, but played for the older people maybe that pass away?
Yeah, more traditional.
Yeah.
Very, Amazing Grace, Old Rugged Cross, On Eagle's Wings.
On Eagle's Wings, yes.
They're all beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, whatever the family wants, because
Yeah.
we played Elvis and the Bee Gees and Johnny Cash and Metallica. Depends on what that person wants. That's what's meaningful to them. To your point about makes me cry, we need to emote. And I am looking forward to that as well. So there's some songs I have on my list that even help me cry because they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Between the lyrics and the music, it's just like, oh my, I'm just right there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of reason to do that. Again, back to there's a time to laugh and a time to cry. We need to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy to do that. And there's no timeline to that. And everyone's different. And if a movie or a song or something comes on that helps us do that, that's a healthy approach, I think, to end of life.
Yeah, my cousin, he was in his 50s, and he had passed away. And his favorite music was, forgive me if I say this wrong, Bono? How do you say that, Zach? You would maybe know.
It's Bono, isn't it?
Bono. One of his Pride, the song Pride.
Oh.
He loved that song. And so our church music director got piano music and they sang it, and it was just awesome. And it was a moment in his funeral where it was like, this is part of him. Like, this is so him.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking of him listening to the song. So you're crying and you're smiling, and it's so meaningful because that was, he loved that song.
Exactly. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
Another one is Over the Rainbow by the Hawaiian gentleman who does Over the
Oh,
Rainbow.
yep.
Often requested.
Really?
Yeah. Things like that have this deep meaning is why we do it. So music is hugely important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about, what would your ideal obituary, how would it start?
Interesting you should ask. I'm working on a seminar about writing our own obituary and really going more deeply, and I think I'm going to incorporate calling it a testament. So
Okay.
Without getting too lengthy, that's the challenge of being, here's my, like Zach is, here's my legacy. Here's my
well,
80 years.
In your dead file,
Yeah,
your
my
obituary must be like 10 pages.
Here's the binder of, outside of that, how do you tell someone's life and be kind of concise at the same time? But to Zach's point about capturing that as a legacy, as a video, would be really cool. But I guess hitting the high points, I don't know. Everyone's a little different. Obviously we have formats and we help people do that.
Yeah.
And there's ways to do that. But it's kind of how do you honor this person and get an idea of their life? And so I might be a little bit different. I don't know about, I don't have any hobbies. I'm not gonna. People don't care what my hobbies are, but I might say things that are really unknown or really different. We'll have to see. I'm kind of always writing my obituary.
Well, I feel like we had to do that in school. Did you ever have to do that?
Do
in,
what, write an
English?
obituary?
Yeah.
No. Not that I remembered.
I think we did in high school. I don't know if for maybe an English class or something. We had to write our own obituary, but it was hard.
It's a good exercise.
I would love to have what I wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, maybe, but I don't remember that one.
Huh.
Mm-mm.
I think that people should write their own obituaries. They'd be so much more interesting.
Do you have a format
Oh,
for
sure.
writing?
Yeah.
Can people download that or find
Sure,
that on the
yeah,
website?
yeah. We have them, and we can give
Like-
them to take home, or
Yeah.
we can help with that. It's
Like, here's 10 questions to help you write your obituary, and here's a format. And
of course, and we've had that for years. Fill in the blanks kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a standard kind of, and it makes it easier.
Oh, I
'Cause
bet AI could write one hell of an obituary.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
no.
Might do that when I
But
get
then-
home. Put all some.
yeah.
Yeah, but then do you want it written by AI or do you want to write it?
Well, then you can change it up a little bit, but
I mean, maybe. Part of me, I love using AI because of the speed.
Mm.
But then the other part of it is like, it takes away some of the creativity.
Some
the-
I
Right. Like,
takes away all of the
real,
creativity.
Right.
it being real.
yeah. It does provide options for, like, I would say a good way for it to, quote unquote, be creative is it illuminates paths of like, hey, you could take this idea, this idea, but then you still have to go through that route and bring in your own piece of information and your own piece of personal touch to it. But that's the speed aspect.
Yeah.
So I think when writing it, you could obviously use it to get great ideas and whatever, but I just wouldn't have it write it completely for you. Like maybe an outline or some ideas, or have it even question you, because you can speak to these AI bots now too. You could also just be like, hey, can you interview me for my obituary? And the AI program can actually interview you and ask the questions.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but
I'm totally doing that.
Because you could at least get an idea of what you'd want to say.
Yeah.
And tweak it from there. But
my file would be like draft 1, draft 2, a draft 3, a draft 4.
And then just have AI summarize it. Like, I got like 16 drafts, man.
Yeah.
Can you pull this together for me? My family's got a short attention span. Oh my gosh. Okay, I just had this idea. What if you made like a page, like for your dead account? Like you passed away, but you made like an Instagram page, and it was like all your reels of who you are.
Oh.
Like,
And then you have instructions for somebody to make
publish them.
Yeah.
You're still like posting when you're like you schedule 6 years of content. Like,
and then there's something to be said.
That would be awesome.
surprise! It's my birthday, but I'm not here anymore.
Yeah, there's some humor.
Happy birthday to me. For those of you that didn't remember that I died and you're wishing me happy birthday, thank you.
That's a little. I think that's. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone's done that one.
Well, probably not. But, for the sake of brevity, I mean, one option I think about, and my humor is coming out about in my obituary, James is dead, party at 7.
Party gets.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
James is dead.
Yeah.
Party at 7.
Instead of this lines and lines and lines, I mean, so you can have some fun with it, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Drinks on me.
That's right.
Totally. I got this round.
Yeah.
Take it to my grave.
No, but back to a little bit, the process of writing that is very helpful. I mean, that, to your point, Mary, drafts, I mean, write it now. Start writing it now.
Yeah.
And then you can just have fun with it and keep doing that. And I like writing. I like being creative. I mean, AI takes, I don't have to think anymore. Here, just do this for me, and I can move on to the next thing. But
there's been IT scans of the brain, CT scans, and of scanning the brain's activity from someone that uses ChatGPT and someone that doesn't.
I just saw this.
Yes, it's quite alarming. And like, you can't take everything for face value on social media.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to do your own research. And I feel like that is seriously lacking right now. But, just even taking it as its face value, like the cognitive brain activity declined so much. Like the neurons connecting when it's because you're not actually using your brain.
Cerebral fitness.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you think about
if you don't exercise it, it's going to atrophy like everything
right
else.
now.
Muscle memory, reactions, just like everything any kind of training you've ever done in your life, whether it be physical or mental or learning, like it takes repetition. As soon as you start taking out the reps, it gets harder and harder and harder.
Exactly.
And and then I think this is a whole rabbit hole. But I feel like you just keep leaning on AI, keep leaning on.
Right.
You like, one point you won't be able to there won't be another option. You'll just be like, oh, this is.
Well, yeah.
smarter
Think
than
of the
me
kids
and
Lila, for example, or just like kids right now that are birth to 5. That's all they're gonna know.
So what do you teach your, we'll save that for a different.
Yeah, we're going off on a tangent here, but yes.
Sorry, James. I'm not trying to.
Yeah, that's okay.
I was looking through these questions, and Kim, who is not with us today, she's on vacation in Michigan with her family, but she wrote up some good questions for us. What is a green burial?
There is a bit of a trend. Green burials don't involve any, typically not a vault, not a casket. One example is wrapping the body in a shroud and putting them in a hole in the ground. It's
like
just
a mummy?
Yeah, just a natural decomposition into the earth.
Yeah.
Like they used to do.
Like they used to do. Like farm animals are buried in, that kind of a thing. In the Midwest, we're a little bit behind here. We don't see a lot of it, but in Oregon and Washington State, they're out a little further in doing some of that. One of the terms is human composting.
Oh, that's not a good
You
word.
know, I mean, I'm just being honest with you about what, we're
Yeah.
obviously organic matter and
Yeah.
we decompose. But that means it's simpler and
Yeah,
a bit
I
of a
mean,
trend.
I've seen
Human
people on social
composting.
media talking about burying their loved ones in their backyard. So
Can't do it.
there's just people
That's-
are.
Today.
Yeah,
Today you can't do it.
yeah. It's not appropriate, not legal. You can't just bury a body anywhere.
Shoot.
That's not.
No.
So, maybe
So that leads us to the question: where is Jimmy Hoffa?
we just opened up a new case.
Where in the world is Waldo?
Dang. Green burial. Human composting.
Yeah. There's again, it's a bit of a trend. I mean, where there's kind of a vessel where they put sawdust in and the body and then just let it naturally decompose.
Oh, there's so
You
many
know.
dogs, though, that like to dig.
Well, this is in a vessel, so then
So-
you get the compost afterwards. And then the family gets this compost as opposed to ashes. They'll get compost and then they can do something.
Which is bones.
Well, all of it. I mean, it's all, reduced down to
Here,
compost.
who wants grandma's teeth?
Kind of. So you have to
Yummy.
look into that a little bit. Again, here we're not quite out in front of that, but there's it's kind of some requests. You can kind of see a trend for that.
Interesting.
That folks just don't want the traditional, what we're used to, and they just want to do something else. But that leads us to cremation, which is becoming the trend. It's 60 to 65% of we do involve cremation.
Really? It's
Yeah.
up that high now.
It's
Okay.
trending. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
And it's a national trend. 2 reasons: convenience, because then once the ashes are there, or the cremains they're called, it's the final disposition in the state of Minnesota, which means the family can do virtually what they want with those ashes, those cremains. So convenience, the family can hold on to them as long as they want, and then later on they might have a celebration of life or a ritual of some kind, or not. And then it's the most economical. Obviously, you're not having lots of other things along with that. Some do. Again, there's such a variety of ways that people want to do that, but a basic cremation just means that the person's cremated and the remains or the cremains are given back to the family.
So-
On average, is it technically less expensive for cremation?
Just a direct cremation is, yes.
Yeah.
It's the least expensive option.
Because of you don't have to pick out a casket.
Correct.
You don't have to.
You don't have a burial in the cemetery.
Yeah.
Again, probably don't rent the chapel for things, or all of that. It's just a cremation. That's all it is. It's just a basic cremation. So
And
we-
for cremation, you don't have to put. I can't think of all those. Like
Where does cremation happen?
we have a crematory at our location in Sauk Rapids where all of our cremations are done.
So does the family go to that?
They can.
Really?
They have the option of processing out to our crematory and going in there and seeing their loved one placed in.
Oh.
But it's not morbid, it's not scary, Mary, it's not creepy. They're in a container. So they're in a container and then they go into the crematory. Once in a while, a family wants to just see that, just witness that, and then they leave. But most times than not, they're not part of that. They're not part of that particular process that goes out there. You can't see anything. You don't stand there and, watch it.
It's not a
happen.
campfire.
No,
Gosh, you're really going.
no,
Oh.
no. But again, it's all part of that ritual, what people want to be involved in. What do they want to do that's meaningful? And we respect that and honor their wishes.
So spreading of ashes. What are the rules on that?
It's not illegal in most places. National parks and national monuments, I believe, it's not allowed.
Okay.
But when people ask, we just say, well, if you're in doubt, get permission. And just do it with dignity and respect, please. But families, in their own yard, sprinkle them in their gardens. And we had a fellow this last year that was an avid hunter again, and he had a deer camp or a deer shack. And his final wishes is that he was buried or scattered at his deer shack, and the family did that. So that's not illegal.
So you can dump them, not dump, well, in lakes, rivers,
We call it sprinkling
sprinkling, yeah,
or scattering.
scattering. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Not necessarily dumping, but
Yeah.
but yes, and again, we're talking about a subject that can be awkward to talk about, and yet, let's try to use just some terminology that's helpful. But
Scattering.
yeah,
Okay.
but the humor is appropriate. I mean, and families do that. I mean, we're not in the business of making this be funny. Families have their own way of doing this, and we will accommodate and respect their wishes.
Yeah. Cremation?
Mhm.
You thinking about cremation now?
I think so.
I think you are too.
I think, yes, I would cremate it. Now I need to decide where I want to be scattered.
Yeah. Well,
Correct. Very good.
James, was there anything that we had missed or anything that you'd like to talk about on before we kind of wrap things up?
Well, I think maybe in summary, Zach, we talked at the break a little bit about the different kinds of grief. And, end of life is so unpredictable, obviously. So living into your senior years and dying when you're well into your 80s and 90s is a different experience than having to be part of it when it's trauma or tragedy. And we understand that. It's a different conversation. It's a different kind of grief. And I just want folks to know that we're aware of that, and that's just our reality as well. We never know, to be honest with you, when we're going to die.
Right.
The only thing I know for sure is we're dying. That's the only thing guaranteed in all of this journey. We're all going to die. And then when we face that reality, I think for me, all that crazy fear goes away. So we're just here and grateful to be helpful on this journey for everyone, whatever that looks like.
For people that want to speak to you directly about planning or moving forward on this process, what would be the best steps or best ways to get a hold of you or to the website or start their planning or start their next?
Williams-Dingmann.com is our website. We have 9 central Minnesota locations. That would be a great place to start. And they can go from there. Our contact information is on there. There's an online pre-planning form on our website that families use to kind of start the conversation, and that's sent right to our offices, and then we'll contact them and invite them in to start a consultation.
Nice. I think we'll have to add that pre-planning form to the description on YouTube.
Yep.
So if you
Sure.
need all
Because it's
watching-
normal. We need to normalize it.
When you normalize things, all the craziness goes away.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you got me thinking again.
Thanks,
No, I
Mary.
think I said last time I'm going to totally do that, and I haven't yet. So,
Well, I'll give you my card.
yeah.
Okay.
Again.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, thanks, James. I think that's it.
I think that's
That's
it.
good.
Another great podcast.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Good to be
So,
with you.
Until next time, this is Zach and Mary signing off. This is Princeton.
Play here,
Stay here.
stay here,
And die
Play
here.
here.
and die here.
And die here.
Yeah.
Die here. It's a great place to die.
It is.
Princeton.